are already in the room. So with that being said, hello everyone. My name is Amari, and this is the CalRCV Coalition Strategy Meeting and statewide meeting. I am actually going to go ahead and hand the mic over to our Executive Director, Marcella. And thank you all for being here again.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amari. Thank you all for being here. I'm so delighted to be here one more time with you guys on our statewide meeting and to have such an amazing guest speaker with us tonight. As always, we're going to have that Q&A portion towards the end of the speaker series. So please feel free to send some of your questions in the chat as I'm asking some questions or as any questions might pop up in your head. So with that being said, because we're 5 minutes in and I want to be mindful of our speaker's time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this evening we have Miss Lisa Aru. I don't know if I just butchered your last name again. And she's joining us from Faribault, Washington. She's the executive director there, and she is in the current process of working on implementation in Seattle. And I really just want to hear a little bit more about just her background into, ranked choice voting and electoral reform and some of the work that they've been doing on the ground there. As you all know, we are working on our statewide strategy here in California and passing ranked choice voting in different jurisdictions across the state. So it's always great to learn from other folks and, just, make more plans on top of their ideas and their work and just learn from them as we're going, build on the work that they're doing. So without further ado, Lisa, it's great to meet you. It's great having you here. I know we've met a few times beforehand, and I'm so intrigued by your background because I saw on your bio that you've, been in the space or at least have known about ranked choice voting for about 30 years now, which is not something that you hear or see too often. There are several folks that, that think that ranked choice voting is this new concept, but you've known about it for quite some time. You learned about it teaching mathematics to your middle school students at the time. So tell us more about, how this came about and how you even got into the movement. What really sparked that interest for you?
Great. Well, thank you, Marcella. And it's so nice to be here with you all, CalRCV. I've been at a bunch of your meetings over the last few years, have really been following your growth. And I was just so excited to see this coming together and the good work you're doing for ranked choice voting in California. We have to stick together. We're the West Coast and
Yes, we have to.
the only top two states in the country. And there are some things that we've noticed over the years that make messaging about ranked choice voting particularly unique for both of our states. So I look forward to chatting with you a little bit about some of that tonight. But my own story, as you said, Marcella, 30-ish years ago, my seventh graders were really ready for something a little different. It was getting close to the end of it was winter time and they just needed a little something different. So we did a week of studying the mathematics of voting and apportionment. And boy, did I learn a lot that year. I had no idea there was more than one way to vote in the world. And at the end of that unit of study, my students said to me, Mrs. Aero, we've now studied a whole bunch of different ways of voting. Each one of them is better than the way we currently vote. Why haven't we upgraded our voting system in all these years? And I thought at that point I had no good answer for them. But I continued my teaching career and increasingly aware of the need to upgrade our voting system. And then in 2016, when I could see the pernicious effects of having an outdated voting system on our nationally, where I just could see unrepresentative outcomes. I could see increasing polarization and disengaged voters. And opportunity came along in my state. I was not the founder of Faribault, Washington, but I came along right after the organization got founded, I think the next month. And I was there and ready to help. And there was a moment a few months later when I gave some unsolicited advice and they turned around and said, well, then why don't you just go ahead and step up? And so I got involved from then. Didn't know anything about building a grassroots movement for political change. And I've been on a wonderful, joyous, steep learning curve ever for the last 8 years.
Wow, that's awesome that you stepped up to the plate. Thank you for doing that. We need more people stepping up to the plate, especially in this space. So, round of applause for Lisa. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. Um, so now that we're specifically talking about, ranked choice voting and ranked choice voting in Washington, when you and I talked on the phone last week, we talked a lot about the similarities between, your state and our state. What are some of those things that you see, that we can be working together with? What are the synergies there? I know that, we talked about Seattle specifically and how they came about to passing ranked choice voting, and we can talk a little bit about that too. But I'm more curious about, what are the similarities? What are the similarities that you see between our both of our states, and how can we be working maybe on a similar strategy, considering that we both have top two?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to say at the outset that one thing to be grateful for, it was fun listening as folks were coming into the meeting and talking about your ballot just arrived in the mail. Yeah, I mean, we're so fortunate here in Washington. We have another week. We're not 29 days out. I think we're more like 18 days out. We'll be getting ours. But we have so many things that we do well, both of our states, around elections. And it's fair to say, I think, that, for all of us who are working on reform, that makes the case for reform a little harder. It just does.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
just does. And so it means that both of our states have really been needing to, it's not a flash in the pan kind of thing, right? We're not just going to go out and gather signatures and just change this voting method overnight. It requires a long-term investment and a lot of education for folks to begin to see, oh yeah, top two was a good idea back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
but it's things have changed. It's now old school. It's not enough. We don't have enough choice under a top two system, and we can do.
Yep. Totally. And maybe you've ran into this issue too, but I think people across the country, they look at us and they're like, well, you guys are advanced in comparison to the
Yeah.
rest of the states in the United States of America. So they're not as inclined to want to help when it comes to, statewide strategy for ranked choice voting in California. Now, that being said, with regards to Seattle specifically, can you tell us a little bit more about the campaign or how ranked choice voting even got passed in Seattle? Was it a signature gathering? Let's just pretend no one here, is familiar with the campaign. Was it referred to the ballot by city council? Tell us a little bit more about Seattle.
Great. I'll be delighted to. I want to just start by saying how much inspiration we in Washington have taken from California, from all the cities that have passed ranked choice voting before Seattle, and learned a
Thank
lot from
you.
all those stories. Yeah. Um,
Awesome.
but Seattle is a big city in the country, and a big name city. And so having ranked choice voting adopted there has been huge for the movement, and we acknowledge that. Like many things in life, I think, you make your plans and then you deal with what comes. So the fact that in Seattle, we had actually not been targeting Seattle. I just want to be really candid. We had not been targeting Seattle, but we had been working for a long time, building a broad and deep coalition in the state, uh, uh, making allies, political allies, community allies, so that when in early 22, a group that had not been working for a long time in Seattle sort of parachuted in and started collecting signatures in Seattle to change the voting method in Seattle to a different voting method, uh, approval voting. I will say that here.
I was going to ask which voting method. Okay, approval voting.
I'm not going to get distracted by talking about that. But anyway, one of our city council member champions said, hey, wait a minute. Okay, this ballot measure is going to go to the ballot, but there is no movement for that voting method in Seattle. But I know there's a movement for ranked choice voting. So let's, us as a city council, let's also put an alternative measure in front of the voters and let the voters have a choice between the two. So that's how that came about. We had 4 months from the day we learned that ranked choice voting would be on the ballot until election day. It was very, very short notice. It was not directly in our plans, but we embraced the opportunity. And because we had been working for so many years building that coalition, we were able to pull it off And on election day, ranked choice voting beat the alternative 3-1. So we were pretty
Wow,
pleased.
that's impressive. 4 months is really short runway.
It was. Thanks, huge credit to our coalition partners who just really came through.
Yeah, my question to that, just because there was such short runway, is, who did you get on board to the coalition? Obviously, you have some of these coalition partners, but I guess maybe on the community, leaders and stakeholders. And did you have people joining you? Maybe labor unions is a big one sometimes that we're running into issues with. Who was part of that more local coalition that joined forces with you guys?
We had started a coalition, mostly of uh, organizations led by and working in communities of color, uh, about 2 years previous to that Seattle campaign. Again, not knowing that the Seattle campaign would be coming. So our initial core coalition was organizations of that nature. But labor unions were tough and continue to be tough. They're not opposed to ranked choice voting in Washington state, but they've been slow to come on board. So that was not actually part of our coalition. Um, what can I say more about the coalition? I think we had at the end at the by campaign day there were something on the order of 30-ish organizations endorsing. League of Women Voters was huge.
Right, that's a big one.
It was absolutely huge.
Now, in terms of, I see somebody asking about coalition members. In terms of coalition members, I know you were saying that you were already working with some local coalitions before the Seattle campaign happened. What was their initial response to just ranked choice voting? What were you getting at the beginning? I know, at least from my experience or our experience, sometimes we get initial like, we don't want to do something like this, or we don't want to change the status quo. But then when you really have those conversations with them, you can usually get them to switch. So I'm curious what your experience has been working with some of these different folks and stakeholders.
Well, we could have a whole entire hour devoted to the topic of coalition building, and we had initially in 2018, 17, 18, when we were just getting started, ran into a tremendous amount of resistance from those same communities, organizations working in communities of color, a lot of skepticism. ACLU, many others, very skeptical. And it was very discouraging, to be very frank. It was very discouraging. And we ended up with just a tremendously effective guy who joined our team, uh, became our partnerships director, and really showed us how to do that long, slow relationship building. And it began to turn the tide after about 2 years. And we began to build a team of more and more trusted messengers, and then the tide really began to shift, and these folks recognized, all of us together, that we had changed the narrative, that we were now recognizing the benefits to voters and communities all over the state. Uh, Particularly proportional ranked choice voting is now um, the
For
North Star reform
Yeah.
for most of these allies. And if you've been to the website, Representing Washington, I think I should get that to you, Marcel, I'm sorry, the URL, see if I can find it, but it's Washington for Equitable Representation is the website of our coalition. And there are two terrific videos up there, just some of the best I've ever seen done, that really explain the benefits of proportional ranked choice voting for more equitable representation. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, if you can send us that, I would love to share that with our statewide list and folks that are on this call so that they could take a look. And just real quick before we move topics, I know you mentioned ACLU, so voting rights groups are tricky. Were you able to get them on board, or at least, be somewhat friendly to the topic of electoral reform and ranked choice voting specifically?
Well, it continues to be a work in progress, but absolutely, we've got a lot of allies within all of those organizations now. And I think the most important thing is to recognize is that you just got to be persistent and patient. It just takes time, lots of investing in coffees and walks and one-on-ones. And we know we're on the right side of history here. We know this is a reform that is benefiting voters and communities. And we understand why there's a lot of skepticism. It makes sense. But give it 2 or 3 years per relationship. And, if you keep on investing in it, they come along. That's what our experience has been. We've never seen an organization go in the other direction. The more they learn, the less they like ranked choice voting. I've never seen it.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear on our end. Yay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that being said, now that you've passed ranked choice voting in Seattle, I know you're in the implementation phase.
Right.
When is the first election with ranked choice voting, and what are you guys currently doing to prepare, the county registrar, the city clerk, to get the process going? What education are you doing in the community? Tell us what the game plan is.
Well, the game plan really is to support the election administrators here in Washington State. We've got a great team of election administrators. They don't want to change the voting system. We get that, but we don't consider ourselves opponents. We consider ourselves to be on the same team. They just don't know all the benefits of ranked choice voting yet, some of them, but they're coming along. So one of my best pieces of advice or strongest pieces of advice is get to know your local election administrators. Go take every opportunity to visit, to be election observers, and to learn what their jobs entail and what it means for them to adopt ranked choice voting. In many cases, it's not as simple as us advocates might like to think it is. They can do it, and it's been done, and they'll do it well. But it is work. It absolutely is. So our team at King County Elections, which administers the Seattle elections, they are all over the adoption in Seattle. We've just been thrilled with their can-do attitude. Now, the part that I'm going to tell you next is, you're going to laugh a little bit, but they're taking 5 years to do it. Okay, so again, nobody's out there just charging ahead. Okay, we said, we'll support this implementation. There are some reasons I can go into if you want to know why we didn't come out opposed to that. We don't consider it to be total recalcitrance. I think they really do, want to get it right. And they've been out testing ballot styles and planning the voter education. It's going to be a great implementation in Seattle, but 2027 is the first use. Now, Seattle only does municipal elections on odd years, so it's not going to be next year, and so then it has to wait 2 more years. But they're not waiting. They are actually working hard. They've got a little task group, and we are part of the task group. We're involved, but they're steering the ship, and we're keeping an eye on it, and it's good. It's looking great. And the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center is already also connected with King County Elections, and we're making sure that all those conversations are happening. And the King County Elections is also working closely with Multnomah County Elections in Oregon, that's about to implement Portland, Oregon's first ranked choice voting election. And it happens that the same equipment vendor, Clear Ballot, it's called, is in use both for Seattle's election and also in Portland. So that really helps because that software is all getting federally certified now and is all getting ready for its first run. So we're keeping a close eye on it. We are absolutely not steering the ship, though.
Okay, and now what about education? Are they also going to be in charge of the education that's getting done around the community? You're just going to be there, to support in that regard.
Well, we have, as you can tell, we have a long, in contrast to the Seattle election, we're short runway. This one, we've got a long runway. So we're keeping an eye on it. Now, vote, one of the things I think everyone knows is that you don't want to start the voter education too early, right? You start talking about ranked choice voting now and it's way too early. It's going to just be confusing. So we're certainly keeping a close eye on what King County Elections is planning to do. I think they're planning to do like the full meal deal, and they're going to be doing everything, really robust voter education. But we're doing what we can sort of around the edges. We're out tabling, for example, in all summer long at fairs and festivals, giving people a chance to try ranked choice voting, letting them know that it's coming to Seattle in 2027. We've run some online kind of fun contests like Seattle, pick your favorite donut shop, and we did that for National Donut Day. But giving Seattle voters in particular lots of chances to try ranked choice voting ahead of the election. But we don't think that there's going to need to be a lot more beyond what King County Elections has planned and what we'll continue to do.
Awesome. Okay. Well, moving on to our next question here. I always ask this to all of our guest speakers. What do you believe have been the biggest structural roadblocks in the movement, and how do you think the movement is overcoming them?
Great questions. So really quickly, here in California, Washington, I think the top two voting system has been a roadblock, at least for us. It certainly has been. State law makes it really tough for jurisdictions to do anything other than the top two. You have some charter cities that have been able to go ahead. We have even fewer of charter jurisdictions that can go ahead. Seattle is one of those charter jurisdictions. But even those are pretty limited. Seattle is going to still have to send the top two vote getters to the November election. I'm not sure if you know that. They can only use ranked choice voting in the primary, and that's because of state law that's currently blocking. So, legal roadblocks like that, we've been working for 8 years on a local options bill that would remove some of those barriers. We'll continue to work on those. Pierce County used ranked choice voting back in 2008, 2009, and that continues to be a story that was kind of hijacked. The opposition sort of hijacked the narrative there, and that continues to be something that we're I guess you could say, just time is passing. It's becoming more and more in the distance, but it continues to come back to haunt us now and then. Not that anything bad happened at Pierce. Nothing bad happened, but the narrative got really hijacked. So so that's been a challenge for us in Washington. The fact that the clear ballot elections equipment, which is used by most Washington voters, not all, but most, has not been federally certified for ranked choice voting until now. That has been a logistical roadblock, but that's being cleared out now. And I would say the other biggest roadblock just is that if you polled, which we did, Washington state voters each of the last several years, more than half of them had never heard of ranked choice voting, even just a few years ago. That is now changing, but it's been slow. And we're very excited now. Our recent polling is now showing that, in fact, most people now have heard of it, and most people who've heard of it like it. So that's great news. So it's just the education piece has been another barrier.
And now, in terms of the polling that you just mentioned, how people are now more aware of ranked choice voting, do you think that's been because of the efforts that have been going on in Seattle, or do you think maybe it's more of a nationwide growth that we're seeing, right? It's the fastest nonpartisan reform that's growing right now in the United States. So do you think it's maybe a mixture of both, or would you say it's mostly the work that's been getting done in Seattle specifically?
Well, just again, to be clear, we're working all over the state, Fair Vote Washington.
Right.
Seattle is by no means the only place we work. So all of our volunteers all over the state who are out tabling at fairs and festivals and talking about ranked choice voting in their communities, certainly a lot of credit goes to just that ongoing education. But
Right.
I think it's pretty obvious that one of the biggest things is just the dysfunction that we're having in our politics nationally is driving a lot of talk about ranked choice voting, and more people are recognizing that it's something that's working. When we see in Alaska, in Maine, in cities all around the country that ranked choice voting is delivering more less negative campaigns, is actually encouraging more women and people of color to run and win, is delivering more representative outcomes, giving voters more choices. It's working. Word is getting out. So I don't think we can take credit as much as maybe we'd like to, but it's a national movement for sure.
We are more for sure going to give you some of the credit. You've been on the ground working hard, definitely.
We have been.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna do a real quick time check. We're almost at time. We literally have 1 minute, but I did see some questions that came in. I know you talked about Pierce County specifically. Somebody here asked, in Washington, ranked choice voting has been adopted in Pierce County that contains Tacoma maybe 10 or 20 years ago, then was repealed after a couple of elections. Any thoughts about why it was repealed and what needs to be done to prevent something similar from happening in Seattle? I think that's a really good question.
Such a good question, and it's what it really has formed the basis of our game plan, Fair Vote Washington, since we got started in 2017. And that is recognizing that it's not enough just to pass ranked choice voting,
Hmm.
to have an
That
organization
lesson.
that's
Yep.
there to help push back against the inevitable opposition, because the losers will try to repeal it, and that's what happened in Pierce County essentially. So making sure that, again, that we're there to protect the win.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, with that being said, I think we're right at time. I just want to give you a few minutes if you have any closing remarks. I know we have a lot of volunteers on here. If there's anything specific that you want to share with our volunteers, like you mentioned, you have so many volunteers across the state that are tabling, that are spreading the word, spreading the good news. It's not an easy thing to do. Is there anything that you want to leave our volunteers with, or you want to leave us with as you work on the ground in Washington and as we're working here in California?
I'll leave with two pieces of advice that I think could be applied anywhere from volunteer to your statewide leadership, and those are work with your election administrators, get to know them. Don't let anybody tell you that they're just going to be opposed and therefore not worth working with. Spend time with them. They probably still will be opposed, but you'll have a much better understanding of the complexities of election administering, changing the system. And I think that will be good for everyone. So get to know the ins and outs of the election administration as best you can. And then the second is to work to build your political program. So get involved with people's campaigns, people who are running for state legislature, for local office. Ask them if they support ranked choice voting. If they don't know about it, tell them about it, and make sure that people running for office know that ranked choice voting matters, and that when people have gotten elected to office, make sure they're hearing from you as their constituent that this is an issue that you care about. It makes a big difference. I know California is bigger than Washington, but in Washington state, it doesn't take very many constituents contacting an elected official for that elected official to say, oh, wait a minute, this is an issue I need to learn about, and this is something I should care about. I mean, literally, it can be 2, 3, 4 people making a difference. So you can be one of those 2, 3, 4 people to help turn the tide for your elected officials.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day and in evening. I know you have a million other things to do, so we're so grateful to have you here, to have you leading Washington, to have you, in this reform. Like I said, we need more leaders in our states and across the country. So thank you so much, Lisa, for all your work and all the work that's to come.
All right, well, go CalRCV. We're rooting for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Take care.
Take care. Have a great
Bye-bye.
rest of your evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Awesome. So I think I'm handing the microphone back to Amari.
That was amazing. Thank you, Marcella, for leading that. And
Can
thank
we
you,
get a
Lisa,
round of
for taking
applause for Lisa? Awesome.
it's very, very informative. I love that segment. So now on to campaign updates. We are going to hear from Alex and Tom. So I think we're going to start with Alex, who's going to give us a recap of what's going on in Richmond. Alex, whenever you're ready, no rush. If you want to hop off mute and let us know, that'd be great.
Great. Hi, folks. Thanks for having me. I think since the last time we spoke, think the last time we spoke, we had just turned in ballot arguments. And so ballot arguments were completed, and the folks who signed on in favor of Measure L are Mayor Martinez, Richmond's mayor, SEIU 10-1, Fair Vote Action. Thank you, Marcella, for all of your help in getting that done. ACE Action and signed on to the rebuttal argument was the Contra Costa Labor Council. And then, as you all may know, there's a competing measure that's also on the ballot in Richmond, which would implement primary elections. In opposition to Measure J, which is the primary elections measure, APEN Action signed on it, ACE signed on, SEIU 10-1, IFPTE Local 21, and also the Contra Costa Labor Council signed on. So that was really great that we also got the Labor Council. That's a big update from, I think, the last time that I spoke with you all. Just a few more updates. Have been live for about just over a month now on cable TV. We're also live on streaming TV as well, Hulu, ABC, ESPN, Disney Plus. So if you know anybody that lives in Richmond, they might be seeing those. We've also dropped one mail piece, and we have a billboard right in downtown Richmond as well. As far as volunteer opportunities, both ACE Action and APEN Action are running our volunteer programs. And I will drop some opportunities that are happening every week for folks to be able to volunteer in person and also phone banking.
Alex, I think Tom just asked if you can give us a quick recap of how, IRV, RCV measure came to Richmond, that not everybody on the call knows the history about it.
Sure. So, and I think Marcella maybe was probably on some more initial calls than I was, but in Richmond, as you all might know, Chevron has dictated and other polluters have dictated kind of the policy that's gone on in Richmond for a long time. And so Chevron and some of its supporters put on the ballot through signature gathering Measure J, which is a measure which would implement primary elections in Richmond. As you all know, that's not great at all. So SEIU 10-1 and a coalition that's worked in Richmond for a long time, East Bay Working Families, came together with Marcella and also James Lindsay to work on this with you all. If there's anything I missed, feel free to add, Marcella.
No, I think you covered everything. I think you covered everything in terms of our budget and some of the things that we've been spending on. The one other thing I just wanted to close off with, and Alex, because she's in charge of our budget here, it is a testament. But as you all know, we do need to raise money to keep the organization going. But more specifically, with regards to Richmond, we are short. We had a deficit of $65,000. Fortunately, we were able to raise a good portion of that, but we are still short $20,000, and that would be for our last mail piece. Is that correct, Alex? I believe so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So we have a donor who's willing to match $10,000 if we're able to raise that. So if you have, if you have the capacity, please feel free to donate tonight so that we're able to send that last mail piece towards the end of this month. I believe is the timeline, Alex, so that we can cover that mail piece. And like I said, someone is willing to match those funds, but please just donate whatever you can. We want to make sure that we stay on TV and that we're still able to stay up on social media as well as our last mail piece. Your money is going into good use. Like Alex said, we've been up for quite some time now. We have a full fledged field team up there by some of the labor unions that are up there. So please help us get it across the line. I know that Arash just posted the link on the chat, so anything you could do would be so wonderful and helpful. Again, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Alex, for joining us to give a quick update on Richmond.
Sure, thank you. And just one last thing too, I want to just give a big shout out to Marcella and everybody on the team as well, because Fair Vote and CalRCV really did do a big lift and got a huge donation for the committee. So that was a really huge help. So thanks again, Marcella, and everybody for all the work that you're doing, because could not be possible without you all. So we appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alex, for joining us.
Sure. And sorry, just one last thing. I'm going to drop the volunteer opportunities into the chat. Sorry that it's a little bit long, but both ACE Action and APEN Action are running phone banks. So there's contact info and details in there for everybody. But if there's questions that are not answered, feel free to, I assume it's okay to ask Marcella or myself.
Yes,
but
you can ask me or Kate on our team, but if anything, just please feel free to reach out to our info at calrcv.org. And one other thing I wanted to mention too is if you're not in Richmond, you can still volunteer. Again, this is phone bank, this is remote. I believe you guys have a dialer, right, Alex? So you can do this from the comfort of your home or your couch. So please sign up on there if you can. Awesome. Thanks so much, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. And now we are handing it off to Tom, our co-founder, one of our co-founders, to give us a quick update on Santa Clara County.
Hi, everyone. So Santa Clara County, if you've been coming to any of our meetings, you've heard us talk about Santa Clara County before. And just a few weeks ago, we had a really important meeting. You might have seen us reaching out for mobilizing efforts for that meeting, particularly if you live in Santa Clara County, because we were mobilizing to get people out. And the good news is we did. We had a really phenomenal showing at this committee meeting that happened a few weeks ago. Let me give a quick history, just like Alex did for Richmond. And I'm going to use Lisa's terminology that she said, talking about lots of things that Fairvote Washington has been working on: patience and persistence. And that is absolutely true in Santa Clara County. Real quick recap. So the journey started over 20 years ago, 26 years ago, in fact, when county voters approved a ballot measure that enabled the county to go to ranked choice voting if the Board of Supervisors of the county wanted to, and the voting equipment had to be compatible, which it was not at the time. Fast forward, I think in 2019, the voting equipment was upgraded to Dominion equipment that is compatible and can run RCV elections. And then the pandemic happened. And so in late 21, early 22, the Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections of the county got together and reviewed RCV at that point and made a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that they should take it up and consider it. And that's when CalRCV and Fairvote, our national partner, got involved. So mid 2022 is when we started on this journey. I think when we started on the journey, we were hoping for like 4 months, like what happened in Seattle. But here we are 2 years plus on, and it's been a lot of patient and persistent effort to get the Board of Supervisors on board, first of all. And then we hit an unexpected roadblock midway through, which is that the county's council read state law and said, hey, we don't actually think counties are allowed to move to ranked choice voting, even if they're charter counties. So it's been clear for a long time that charter cities in California can move to ranked choice voting if they want to. And Santa Clara County is a charter county, and their read was, we don't actually think state law allows this. It's ambiguous. We actually do think that state law allows this, and made arguments to that end, but the county council said, no, we just don't want to take the risk. And so we had to hit pause on our efforts at the county level. And instead, run a Senate and have Newsom, which we did in 2023. So we got that done. And so we were able to get back onto working on the Board of Supervisors. This meeting that we had a few weeks ago was a committee meeting. We had hoped that going into that meeting, we would be able to fast track it back out of committee and get a full board vote before the end of the year with the current seated board, since we've been talking with these folks for several years now and building a lot more enthusiasm and willingness to say yes to ranked choice voting among this board, but we couldn't do that. So we had a great showing. We had a lot of people show up and speak in favor of RCV, but not for any unreasonable reasons. The committee said, look, we need some more information from the registrar of voters. Obviously, the registrar of voters is very busy right now running an election. So we're going to wait until next spring to have the registrar of voters come back with a report on exactly how they're going to implement RCV, because there were unanswered questions. And so although it's not as fast of an outcome as we were hoping for, things are still on track. And in fact, looking at the candidates who are, right, we have 4 candidates, 2 for one seat and 2 for the other seat. There are 2 seats up with the Board of Supervisors this November. And several of those candidates we already know have publicly stated they support ranked choice voting. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape to have the new Board of Supervisors vote on this, but it won't be until next spring. So timing wise, slower than we would have liked, but things are still on track. And in fact, we might actually get more yes votes on this than we would have otherwise. We knew we had 1 solid no on the board and could not get that vote changed despite a lot of effort. We might be able to get unanimous support on the new board. We'll see. So that's the update in Santa Clara County. And really thank you everyone who's been, certainly all the people in Santa Clara County have been working on this, as well as around the state. We had, just like in Richmond, you don't have to be in the county or the city to have an impact. Obviously, by giving money, you can have an impact, and also by doing things like phone banking and text banking, the supporters in that city or county, to get them mobilized. That's really helpful as well. That's it on Santa Clara County.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. And I actually, if we can go back 1 slide, Arash, we have one more, I would say, campaign update or call to action. We have Steve Hill here with us. Steve, if you can unmute yourself and just give us your quick call to action for tomorrow.
Sure. Thank you, Marcella and CalRCV. So tomorrow, we have an important meeting at 2 p.m. at the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. They're going to be voting on our proposal that would direct the registrar of voters, who's a very obstructive registrar of voters for years, but it would direct him to release the cast vote record report prior to the 30-day certification. In fact, would do it like in the first week after the election. And the reason this is important is because if he had been following this policy, which San Francisco has been observing for quite a few years, we wouldn't have had the scandal that we had in November 2022 when the registrar announced the wrong winner in an RCV race for an Oakland school board member, because he had made mistakes in how he administered that election, particularly in how he used the Dominion equipment for ranked choice voting. And so by doing this, it's basically going to have unprecedented transparency, accountability, and even accuracy of elections in Alameda County, because it means groups like CalRCV or Fair Vote could get hold of the cast vote record report, and you could run the tally yourself and make sure that they're doing it correctly. And so it also gives us data, early in the election, so that we can show, like, look, the number of overvotes was really low, the number of undervotes was low. This is a good election, instead of having opponents just saying like, oh, people were confused, and you can show like the number of overvotes were less in this election than in a non-RCV election. So how can you say they were confused? So it gives us the ability to have data to really make the good narrative that then counters the bad narrative, especially in a place like Oakland, where we've had problems in recent years. So this is part of our ongoing effort there. including establishing an elections commission about a year ago, and now getting things like cast vote records so that we can run better RCV elections in Alameda County, and particularly in Oakland, which has become such a dark, the Oakland story of what happened 2 years ago is cited nationally as reasons why states and cities should not use ranked choice voting, because they said, look what happened in Oakland, and this is what will happen to you if you don't do it. So we have a vested interest as movement activists to make sure that good elections are being run, especially in a place like Oakland. So this is part of our long-term effort. So tomorrow at 2 p.m., we need people. Supervisor Keith Carson, who's carrying the legislation to direct the registrar, his office has said, you guys have to turn out a big support. There's a lot of legal BS that's being thrown up. We're countering that legal BS, but they said it's going to come down to the politics of it. And so a big turnout is going to be really important to get this policy passed. And you don't have to be from Alameda County. This affects the entire state. It's about a bill that was passed, SB 1328. So you can feel free to weigh in from wherever you are. I'm going to put in Basecamp more information, including the link of how you would, participate by Zoom. So be looking for that. And that's, I guess that's about all. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. Thanks
Steve,
for giving me some time.
if we have some folks on here who are not on Basecamp, do you think you could post a link on the chat before we close off at 7?
Yes, I can. Let
Okay.
me get to it. Good
And
idea.
then in terms of the public comment, is there something that you can send folks, or some bullet points that you can share with them for public comment?
Yeah, I was going to put that in Basecamp, but I can put something quickly in Zoom. But I mean, even if you're not up on every nuance of what's been going on behind the scenes, and there's been a lot, there's no way to update all of it. The basic message is, Board of Supervisors, please direct your registrar to run better elections and have transparency, accountability, and accuracy of elections by publicly releasing the cast vote record report early in the election. It's a really simple message, and anything else you want to say, it's actually best, if you don't mind, not saying something about ranked choice voting, because we're portraying this as bigger than an RCV issue. With those overvotes, as I said, you can show, for example, which precincts had more of overvotes than other precincts. So that's good data for a registrar of voters or for organizations to target their education and outreach for future elections. So there's lots of good reasons to do this that we are trying to highlight in this. And so, yeah, you don't need to mention RCV.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate it. And we will wait for your link on the chat before we close off tonight.
Thank you.
Great. So I am handing the mic off to Amari, I believe.
Hang on. I
Oh.
want a special announcement. June asked, can we check how much has been donated during this meeting to the Richmond RCV effort?
Awesome.
I just pulled that number up, and I want to have a huge round of applause because just during this meeting, we've raised $6,800 for the Richmond RCV campaign. So huge applause to that.
Thank you so much,
People
everyone.
have really been generous on this call. That's a phenomenal response, and thank you to everyone who donated. If you can, right, we're still short. We've got what, 13,000 something to go. But that, well, and actually there's some money that was donated outside of this meeting, so a little bit less than that.
And
but
we have the match. So I think technically we're still like 4K and
that's
change.
right.
Yeah.
So anything you can do, $5, $20, $100, $1,000, whatever it is that you can do, please donate and tell your friends, right? Especially if you've got people who support ranked choice voting. Maybe they're not coming to these meetings, but they want to see this in another city. This is a huge opportunity to get RCV passed in Richmond. So remember that, and make sure to put it in that, not just the regular donate link, but the donate-Richmond link. That way we know it's specifically for Richmond, and that money will go to the Richmond campaign.
Yay! Thanks so much for checking, Tom, and June. Thank you so much for asking. I'm excited. We're almost at our goal. So thank you, everyone. With that being said, I know we have 7 minutes left, so I am handing this off to Amari next.
Okay, yes, we are almost done here. I think that we have a short Q&A on the agenda. So if we want to get any questions asked in this last 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes, please feel free to raise your hand, drop them in the chat, whatever works for you. We'll be happy to answer those. But if not, we can go ahead and wrap this meeting up early. But here for questions if anyone has any. Don't want to rush anyone that has any last thoughts. And if I'm missing a hand or a ping, just let me know. But I
And
don't see anything yet.
just real quick too, Arash, if you can put back actually our scan code for our Mobilize events. I know we have a few events coming up in the next month or so. So it would be great if we can get folks to sign up to volunteer. Again, our sign up links for volunteering in Richmond specifically are in the chat. If you do want to volunteer with Richmond specifically, please feel free to reach out to me. I will post my email in the chat right now or do our info@CalRCV. Whatever you can do to help us, we would greatly appreciate it, specifically with Richmond because there's that opposing measure. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we're here to answer any things that might come up.
Marcella, someone actually just asked how they can get involved with Santa Clara County.
Tom, do we have a mobilized link for that one?
We don't have a mobilized link right now. I was starting to type answer, but I'll just answer verbally. So in the near term, the biggest opportunity is to join our speakers bureau. So we are continuing to go around, Lisa again said it earlier, a lot of, well, she talked about getting coffee with people, that kind of thing. Another key way to build support in the community is to go to your church or synagogue or mosque or whatever, to go to other faith communities, local community groups, labor groups, the local party clubs. There's a whole bunch of organizations that are engaged in politics in every community. Here in Santa Clara County, we have a long list of groups that we have been reaching out to and saying, the county is considering ranked choice voting. Let us come in and tell your membership about it. And those are incredibly helpful presentations because, as Lisa said, never once has there been someone who, once they learn more about ranked choice voting, they like it less, right? It's that they almost always like it more. And so joining the Speakers Bureau is something to do if you're interested in that, if you want to get trained up and you're comfortable public speaking. Email us at info@calrcv.org and one of us will follow up with you. That's in the very near term. And then in the spring, as we get closer to getting back in front of the committee and then getting in front of the full board of supervisors, we're going to need to mobilize and get people out giving public comment at those meetings. That's critical as well. And so, if you're on our email list and we know you're in Santa Clara County, you'll hear from us about that as well. So yeah, those are the two main things right now.
Perfect. I think that was the only question, unless I'm missing someone. We have about 3 minutes left. So if anyone else has any other questions, comments, or concerns, but hopefully there aren't any. We had an amazing meeting today. Okay. I think that's it. We can close with 2 minutes, 2 minutes early.
For the Board of Supervisors meeting for Alameda County, what was the time on that? Is that in the link? I just saw that was a Zoom link. What can you post also?
Yeah, that was 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay, maybe we put that in the chat so it's all in one place if we're saving the chat.
Perfect.
Steve, can you go ahead and do that? I don't know if you're still on there. You might be on
I'm
mute.
doing it. I'm doing it. Sorry. Good suggestion.
No worries.
And it'll be right at 2 o'clock because it's the only thing under set matters. It's like the last thing they're working on, and they know it's going to be a big one. So, you won't have to be sitting around for an hour. In other words, waiting. I mean, you never know, but we shouldn't be.
And I believe Emmanuel Marquez is asking where the base camp links will be posted. Steve, do you know where you're going to be posting it? Under volunteers?
Yeah, under volunteers. There's already a link there. It says 2 p.m. Alameda County Board of Supervisors, and I'll add to that. I just put a placeholder in there last night so people would be aware of it.
Awesome.
And the date, just to make things complete?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow, okay.
Tuesday.
Perfect.
Great. Well, I think that's all for tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again, and thank you for your contributions and continued support.